genre tends to manifest the worst kind of villains. However, there are certain baddies that are ironically not so bad. The arguments of these kidnappers, torturers, and killers can be so compelling that viewers may find themselves agreeing with them more than their victims. Now, this subject has been looked at before, but one list just wasn't enough. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 more horror villains who were kind of right. Number 10. Christine. In this Stephen King adaptation, geek Arnie falls in love with a red Plymouth Fury named Christine. After purchasing the car, Arnie believes his luck is going to turn around for the better, but when he is pestered by some bullies, he learns Christine is alive and willing to protect herself and her owner at all costs. As Arnie grows increasingly unstable, he starts using Christine to exterminate everyone who's ever wronged him. Because Christine poisons Arnie's mind and runs down everyone that rubs her the wrong way, it's easy to see the sentient automobile as evil incarnate. However, Christine tends to attack out of instinct rather than malice. Every time she kills, it's because she felt disrespected or threatened. For example, she only murdered a factory worker because he covered her upholstery with cigarette ash. She mowed down the bullies because they smashed her to pieces. She crushed Moochie into paste because he took a dump on her dashboard. Christine tries to kill Dennis and Lee because they try and eventually succeed at reducing her to scrap metal. But that's not malevolence, it's self-preservation. Number 9. The Spirits. Poltergeist. In Poltergeist, Stephen and his family discover a supernatural force in their home. Although Stephen is intrigued by the entity at first, he's horrified when it banishes his daughter Heather to another dimension. Stephen eventually discovers the paranormal unrest is due to his house residing over a former cemetery. Although the corpses were seemingly moved to another location, the spirits remained for some reason. After hiring a medium, Heather is returned and the home is supposedly cleared. To everyone's surprise, the ghostly activities intensify, with the house tearing itself apart and skeletons bursting onto the surface. Only then does Stephen realise the construction executives only moved the gravestones, not the bodies. Because of this, the spirits couldn't move on, compelling them to lash out. Even though this family played no part in defiling the Phantom's burial site, the spirits' violent behaviour is valid. Their resting place was completely desecrated, purely so bureaucrats could save some cash. To add to the spirits' defence, they didn't kill anybody during their onslaught. Yes, they scared the hell out of the family and cast their house into another reality, but at least they have no blood on their hands. Number 8. Harry Cooper. Night of the Living Dead. In Night of the Living Dead, a horde of zombies begin attacking people, forcing a small group to seek refuge in a cabin. Due to his assertiveness and quick thinking, Ben is quickly perceived as the leader of the group, which creates a conflict with Harry, who hates taking orders. Every time Ben offers any practical advice to help everyone survive the night, Harry shoots it down. On 2 occasions, he attempts to leave Ben to die. Because of behaviour like this, Harry could be perceived as a bigger villain than the mindless flesh-eaters trying to break in. And yet Harry isn't necessarily in the wrong. Ben rejects Harry's plan to hide in the cellar since they would be trapped if the zombies broke through. But the ghouls never find the cellar, proving Harry's scheme could have worked. Despite the fact Ben's methods sounded logical, everyone in the group died, including him. Also, Harry isn't just thinking about himself, but his wife and his daughter. Because his child has been bitten by a zombie, he was worried about her well-being, which is why he was against Ben's decision to move her. Harry's a jerk, don't get me wrong, but the party may have survived if they'd at least listened to him. Number 7. Julian Slowik. The Menu. In the Menu, culinary artist Julian Slowik invites a group of foodies to his secluded island where he promises them an evening they'll never forget. After they arrive, Slowik explains how each of his guests played a part in him losing his passion for cooking. Unable to go on, the gourmet chef announces that everyone in attendance will be dead by the end of the night. At first, Slowik's decision seems somewhat understandable. When he reveals his investors cheated him out of his money, it's clear where the master cuisiner's motivation stems from. Viewers want to see Tyler get his just desserts, pun intended, when he proves to be a sycophantic psycho. However, the melancholic cook's actions don't seem so justified when he points out he's going to kill an actor purely because he didn't like his movie. When the guests point out how ridiculous Slowik is behaving, he reminds them that none of them put up a fight. If they were so desperate to live, why didn't they come at Slowik and his employees guns blazing? Sure, there would have been casualties, but there was a 100% chance of death by not doing so. Also, Slowik allows one guest to walk free when she momentarily awakens his zest for cooking. Nobody else attempts to reason with SLOWIK in a similar way, which is why they all wound up dead. Number 6. Sam, Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat is a wonderfully mean-spirited anthology that explores all sorts of spooky goings-on in Warren Valley on Halloween. Throughout each story, a sack-wearing boy called Sam appears, usually before someone suffers a terrible fate. In the film's final segment, Sam invades the house of the holiday-hating Mr. Krieg. Despite his small size, Sam easily overpowers the curmudgeon and slices nearly every part of his body with box cutters. Although Krieg is a grouch, it's hard not to feel bad for him since he endures an overwhelming amount of punishment during this assault. But all that changes when it's revealed that Krieg was a bus driver paid by parents to dispose of their disabled children. After putting 8 kids on his bus, Krieg drove them to a quarry where the vehicle was ridden into a lake. Although the children drowned, Sam returned as a ghoul so he could deal with his unfinished business. Even though viewers felt sorry for Krieg at first, it's likely that they were cheering Sam on when he summoned the rest of the murdered children to tear the bus driver limb from limb. Number 5. Death, the Final Destination franchise. Every Final Destination installment follows the same formula. Someone has a premonition of an imminent disaster, giving them enough time to save a select few. Because these individuals were destined to die, they've indirectly created an imbalance in the natural order. To restore balance, Death has no choice but to eliminate anyone who's cheated him. Because the Grim Reaper is ruthlessly persistent, he comes at his prey with everything, including hooks, nail guns, pigeons, ladders, loose cables, escalators, lasers, jump-scare-inducing buses, and Buddhist statues. Since Death is a force of nature, he can never be truly beaten. These cheaters can delay the inevitable, but they can never escape it. And because his victims usually perish in a gross or agonizing manner, Death seems pretty twisted. However, Death isn't killing out of enjoyment. It's literally his job. Although the demise of anyone is tragic, it's a part of life. Sure, Death doesn't have to snuff people out so grotesquely, especially during the infamous sunbed scene in Final Destination 3, but the franchise would be dull without some OTT gore to liven things up. Number 4. Alexandria Collins, Last Night in Soho. In Last Night in Soho, innocent teen Ellie moves to London, hoping to become a fashion designer. While in her bedsit, Ellie has vivid dreams where she inhabits the body of 1960s singer Sandy, who seems to be on the way to superstardom. Over time, Ellie learns these dreams are visions, meaning Sandy was a real person. As Ellie continues to relive these memories, she learns Sandy was mistreated at the nightclub she worked at, especially by her manager Jack, who pimped her out to his associates. After dreaming of Jack viciously attacking Sandy, Ellie is convinced she was murdered. To her surprise, she discovers that her bedsit landlady, Alexandria Collins, and Sandy are one and the same. Not only that, Sandy murdered Jack and all the men she was forced to sleep with, but considering her circumstances, it's tough to really blame her. Instead of turning Sandy into the next big thing as he promised, Jack had her beaten, humiliated, and manipulated into prostitution. Also, she only killed Jack out of retaliation since he came at her with a knife. The murder of her customers may be less justified, but it's easy to see why Sandy snapped since her life was destroyed after she was promised the world. Number 3. Pamela Voorhees, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th didn't just help to further popularise the slasher genre, but promoted the idea that serial killers prey on horny teenagers. This trope makes sense in Friday the 13th's first instalment, since teen sex is directly responsible for kicking off the entire plot. In Camp Crystal Lake, the counsellors had sex while they were supposed to be monitoring the campers. In their absence, young Jason Voorhees fell into the water and died for a while. Jason's mother, Pamela, was enraged how her son died due to the counsellor's neglect, encouraging her to butcher everyone in the camp. Now, does Pamela's tragic circumstances justify her murder spree? Of course not. But are her actions understandable? Absolutely. Not only did the counsellors suffer no consequences for their incompetence, everyone at the camp keeps hooking up. Even when they know there's a homicidal maniac on the loose, the campers can't go 5 minutes without having sex. If the employees of Camp Crystal Lake did their job and looked after their campers, Pamela Voorhees, and by extension Jason, would have never been compelled to kill anyone. Number 2. Pinhead, the HELLRAISER franchise. It's hard to find a movie villain more malevolent than Hellraiser's big bad Pinhead. The chain-whipping Cenobite dreams of turning Earth into a new hell. Nothing brings him more joy than torturing his prey and literally tearing souls apart. Because Pinhead is beyond redemption and unquestionably evil, it seems impossible to defend his actions. And yet, most of his victims only have themselves to blame. Nearly everyone who's had the misfortune of encountering the leather-clad demon is because they were messing around with the lament configuration, which serves as a doorway to hell. If someone is foolish enough to reconfigure this puzzle box, it allows Pinhead and his cohorts access to Earth. Even though Pinhead is depicted as an unstoppable force, the grid-faced entity has no power in our realm, so long as his little toy is left alone. If someone is dumb enough to play around with forces they don't understand, it's their own fault when they suffer the Hell Priest's wrath. Considering it's never ended well for anyone who's used the Lament configuration, it's bewildering why people keep trying to get a hold of it. Number 1. Jigsaw, the Saw franchise. After John Kramer, aka the Jigsaw Killer, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumour, he became frustrated by people who didn't appreciate their blessings. Over time, he started to kidnap those he deemed ungrateful, putting them through games where they must shed blood to survive. Because many people have been mutilated, melted, crushed, incinerated, and dismembered in Jigsaw's name, he is regarded as a monstrous serial killer. But contrary to his name, the Jigsaw Killer has never killed anyone. If each of his trials are followed to the letter, the contestants will survive. Sadly, Jigsaw's victims are often too overwhelmed by fear to perform the task at hand, leading to their own demise. Although Jigsaw is seen as evil, he shows unrealistic restraint while punishing the wicked. Even though his victims include rapists, drug dealers, and baby killers, he's willing to offer them a second chance. When confronted with Cecil, the man who murdered his unborn child, Jigsaw still gave him the opportunity to walk free if he completed one of his trials. Also, several of Jigsaw's former victims, including Gordon, Amanda, and Logan, felt rehabilitated by their tests, proving they are not without merit. And that's everything for this list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.